You've probably heard the advice 1,000 times. Just listen more, express yourself, take time to reflect. But what if these aren't just nice suggestions? What if they're actually the 3 precise mechanisms through which human consciousness transforms? Today's chapter breaks down the exact process of how we move from stuck to free, from confused to clear, from suffering to liberation. And the clarity is remarkable. This retelling has been adapted for modern audiences, based on J.L. Shastri's English translation. After hearing Brahma's teaching about the 3 essential practices, the sages weren't satisfied with just knowing the names. They wanted specifics. They wanted the user's manual. The sages asked, "O Holy One, you've told us these are the 3 essential practices. But what exactly is Shravana? What does Kirtana actually involve? How is Manana performed? Please explain precisely, in ways we can actually practice." Brahma smiled at their honest inquiry and began to explain. He said, "Listen carefully, because I'm going to describe how consciousness actually shifts. First, let's talk about Manana, deep reflection and meditation. The mind naturally loves to reason, to deliberate, to ponder, to evaluate. This isn't a flaw. It's actually your greatest tool when properly directed. Manana is the ability of your mind to consider and evaluate the nature of Shiva, his worship, the power of his names, his attributes, his forms, his divine activities. This capacity to reflect deeply doesn't just happen randomly. It's the result of Shiva's benevolent glance falling upon you, his grace awakening your deeper intelligence. And here's what makes Manana so powerful. When you can maintain this steady continuance in deliberation, when your mind keeps returning to these profound questions, rather than getting lost in endless distraction, this becomes the most important of all the means to transformation. He paused, letting that sink in, then continued. Kirtana, glorification or expression. This means clearly articulating Shiva's exploits, attributes, forms, activities, and names. You can do this by reciting traditional teachings, retelling Shiva's lore, singing devotional songs, even expressing these truths in your mother tongue, in your own words. The key is authenticity and clarity. You're not just mindlessly repeating formulae. You're finding ways to express what you're discovering in language that resonates with truth. Kirtana is the middle practice of the 3. A sage interrupted. "Shravana, you mentioned it first, but explained it last." Brahma nodded. "I saved the best for last. Because Shravana, true listening, is where everything begins. Shravana is listening to words concerning Shiva in whatever manner, however and wherever they are expressed. But here's the crucial part. You must listen with the same focused attention as people give to intimate conversation, to matters of the heart that genuinely captivate them. Not half listening while doing your work, not hearing while your mind plans tomorrow's tasks, but complete, absorbed, devoted attention. And here's how they work together. Shravana happens when you associate with wise people, when you put yourself in the presence of truth. Then Kirtana becomes steady. You start naturally expressing what you've heard. And finally, Manana develops, that most excellent practice of deep contemplation. All 3 arise as a result of Lord Shiva's benevolent surveillance, his grace working through the natural capacities of your consciousness. Sutha spoke up, "O saints," in the context of explaining the greatness of these 3 practices. Let me share an ancient story. It's particularly close to my heart because it involves my own teacher, the great Vyasa himself. Long ago, Vyasa, son of sage Parashara, was performing intense spiritual practice on the bank of the river Sarasvati. Despite all his wisdom, he was experiencing some mental agitation, some sense that something crucial was still missing. As he sat there, the divine sage Sanatkumara happened to pass by in an aerial chariot that blazed like the sun. Sanatkumara, one of the eternal youths, spotted Vyasa below. Something in Vyasa's energy must have called to him, because he decided to descend. Vyasa, waking from his meditation, suddenly saw this luminous being before him. Despite being the great compiler of wisdom himself, he immediately recognized a teacher when he saw one. He paid deep obeisance, trembling with both reverence and excitement. He offered arghya, the traditional welcome, and a seat befitting such a divine guest. Sanatkumara, delighted by Vyasa's humility and genuine seeking, spoke words of profound depth. He said, "O sage, you must meditate upon the true object, the ultimate reality. I can see that. The great Lord Shiva can be realized and seen directly. I know that. But tell me, why are you performing penance here alone? What are you really seeking?" Vyasa, clarifying his purpose, replied, "By the favor of divine elders like yourself, I have established the 4 aims of life in the world: virtue, wealth, love, and salvation, with due adherence to the Vedic path. I've become a teacher to many, and yet it's surprising, even shocking to me, that the actual knowledge of the means of liberation hasn't truly dawned on me. I know about salvation intellectually. I've written about it. I perform penance for the sake of it. But I don't actually know how to achieve it. That's why I'm here, performing this penance. I'm looking for the real path." When Vyasa made this honest request, Sanatkumara, that most competent divine sage, revealed the sure way of realizing salvation. He explained, "There are 3 means in perfect conformity with Vedic wisdom: Shravana, Kirtana, and the highly efficacious Manana of Shiva. These aren't just nice practices. They're the actual mechanism of transformation. Let me tell you how I know this. Formerly, I too was confused by endless spiritual methods and techniques. I performed a great penance on Mount Mandara, trying everything, searching desperately for the real path. At Shiva's own bidding, the divine attendant Nandikasvara arrived where I was practicing. That compassionate lord of the Ganas, witness to all spiritual struggles, looked upon me with such loving kindness, and he told me, quite simply, about these 3 excellent means of salvation: Shravana, Kirtana, and Manana, all in perfect harmony with ultimate truth. So I'm not sharing theory with you, Vyasa. I'm sharing what was taught to me directly by one of Shiva's own attendants, and what I have practiced and verified myself. Hence, O holy sage, as advised by Shiva himself through his messenger, these are the 3 means of salvation. Please practice them." Sutha concluded. Sanatkumara kept emphasizing this to Vyasa, making sure he understood not more complicated methods, not endless additional practices, just these 3, done with genuine devotion. After delivering this teaching, Sanatkumara mounted his aerial chariot with his followers, and returned to his splendid and auspicious realm, leaving Vyasa with the most practical gift: a clear path forward. Thus, dear sages, I've told you this ancient story in brief. The sages, practical as always, had one more concern. The sages said, "O Sutha, you've explained Shravana, Kirtana, and Manana beautifully. But what if someone finds themselves unable to practice all 3? What if life circumstances, or limitations of capacity, make it impossible? What should that person do to achieve liberation? Is there a rite or practice that makes salvation possible without such demanding discipline?" And here the chapter ends, setting up what will presumably be answered next: the question of grace, of alternative paths, of how transformation works when we can't follow the prescribed formula perfectly. This chapter gives such a clear map of transformation, and so obviously applicable beyond just spiritual practice. Maybe that's why this teaching has survived thousands of years. Here, Brahma isn't describing religious rituals. He's describing the actual cognitive emotional process through which human beings transform. When you actually think about it, what makes a person change? First, you encountered something that shifted your perspective. A book, a conversation, an experience, a teaching. You listened in that deep way where something actually penetrated your usual defenses and assumptions. That's Shravana. Then, you found yourself unable to stop talking about it, writing about it, trying to articulate this new insight to others. In expressing it, you discovered whether you really understood it or not. That's Kirtana. Finally, over time, you kept returning to it in quiet moments. It worked on you beneath the surface. Your understanding deepened and integrated until it wasn't just an idea anymore, but had become part of how you see reality. That's Manana. What strikes me about Brahma's explanation is how psychological it is. In Professor Shotri's version, he says the mind is fond of reasoning, deliberation. He's working with how consciousness actually functions, not against it. Manana isn't about suppressing thought. It's about directing that natural capacity for reflection toward questions that matter. Similarly, his description of Shravana really landed for me, listening with the same steady attention as in the sporting dalliance of women, or in modern terms, with the absorption you give to things that genuinely captivate you, not dutiful, forced attention, but the quality of presence you naturally have when something speaks to your deepest interests and needs. The Sanatkumara story is fascinating, because even the great Vyasa, compiler of the Vedas, one of the most revered sages in Hindu tradition, reaches a point where he realizes, I've taught others, but I don't actually know the path myself. That level of honesty is rare and valuable. And Sanatkumara's response is also so practical. This chapter tells us that all three arise as a result of Shiva's benevolent grace. So it's not purely mechanical. You can't force it. Practice is essential, but practice itself is somehow a gift. The capacity to listen deeply, to express truthfully, to reflect profoundly, are skills. But these skills aren't something you develop through willpower. It's something awakened by willpower that comes through contact with something greater than yourself. But for now, the teaching seems clear. If you want genuine transformation, here's the mechanism. Listen deeply, express authentically, integrate patiently, and trust that grace is working through all three. In our next episode, we'll get the answer to the sage's question about alternative paths when these three practices aren't fully possible, which again I thought was amazing, because it acknowledges human limitation, the mechanisms of actual life, where ideal practice isn't always possible. Anyway, what do you think? What's your experience been with these three movements? Share your reflections in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell. Until next time, keep questioning, keep practicing, and keep dancing with the mystic.